WNYC TV presents About the Arts with Barbara Lee Diamonstein.
I'm especially pleased to welcome one of the most distinguished and provocative playwrights of our time, Edward Albee. I'm Barbara Lee Diamonstein, and this is About the Arts. Welcome to you, Edward. Pleased to have you with us.
Thank you, Barbara Lee.
It's now quite widely known that your childhood, as the son of Mr. and Mrs. Keith Albee of the theater chain, was one of wealth and comfort. What isn't quite so widely known is the 13 years that you spent from the time you were 17 as a short order cook, a singing telegram deliverer, a seller of records at Bloomingdale's, a writer of continuity at our very own WNYC. Why did you choose to live that way?
Well, you have to see everything in comparison, don't you? And if you grow up in a very nice family with all sorts of comforts, then you've got to go out and see what it would be like to finish your growing up otherwise. That's in theory. In practice, I wanted to do a lot of things on my own, a lot of growing up, a lot of behaving exactly the way I wanted to behave. And it seemed the best way to do that was to do that without, not necessarily embarrassing, but certainly without involving anybody else. So I took off on my own.
Was there ever an element of not being involved in any jobs that really tried you intellectually?
I decided very, very consciously that I would never take any job that I would last at for very long, or that would be exhausting intellectually. The job I held longest was running telegrams. In those days you could walk them, the streets were safer. Walking telegrams for Western Union, which I did for 2.5 years. This was a very interesting and provocative job. I met a great number of very interesting people.
Did any of them ever get translated into your literature?
Oh, sure, of course.
Any memorable ones?
Oh, let's not talk about the movie star who used to come to New York on drunks and hole up on the 5th floor of a rooming house on 85th Street, and I used to have to take his checks from the studio to him once a week. No, I won't talk about that.
I wouldn't dream of it.
I was thinking about that just the other day, the Western Union thing. I think the fact that I dealt with a lot of people who were afraid of telegrams was exceedingly interesting. Death messages sent to poor people in New York City used to be, I don't know if this is still true or not, used to be sent by collect telegram. So the poor people who were living in rooming houses and couldn't barely afford to live there would be charged $1.05 to receive a message saying, come get your aunt, she died. So what I used to do is I used to tell the people, look, this is a very unpleasant message and it's collect. Read it, write down the information, and give it back to me, and I'll say you refused it. I met a lot of interesting people, obviously thousands, and I don't know whether it was useful to me. I imagine that Jerry in the Zoo Story and his environment comes a good deal from the environment that I witnessed working on the Upper West Side of New York for Western Union, sure.
The Zoo Story was your very first play, not written, but produced. You obviously wrote all of your life.
Well, I started writing when I was 6, poetry, novels in my teens, a 3-act sex farce when I was 12 and a half, a play in rhymed couplets, God Help Us, which I think of as a long and terrible poem in my early 20s. Zoo Story was the first play that I wrote, aside from those 2 experiments. I wrote it in either 58 or 59, I don't remember, 58.
58.
Thank you. I can't remember.
The reason that
it's 20 years ago, isn't it?
The reason that I remember is I can recall reading that play was written 2 months before your 30th birthday.
That
and you
must
said
indeed have been written in
58.
Thanks a lot.
Yes.
1958 then.
And you said that it was a gesture to yourself. With all that you've accomplished, and still to be so young, if that was your first well-known play 2 months before your 30th birthday, and now it is obviously out, that it is approximately 2 months before your 50th birthday, what do you have in mind now?
Well, I just happened to have finished a play, as a matter of fact, called The Lady from Dubuque, which I am at the moment exceedingly fond of.
The lady and the play?
Both. Both equally, I guess. I've never been to Dubuque.
Has she?
No.
What does the title mean?
What does the title mean? The title means it's what the play means, and I never like to talk about what they're about. I much prefer to get the misinformation from the critics as to what they're about, and then make up my mind what they're really about. They're all perfectly straightforward, simple plays.
Yeah.
Every single one of them.
Do the characters know that, however?
The actors who play them do. I've never had an actor, with one exception, say to me, I don't understand this role, no matter how complex anybody else has thought the play was.
Well, we're all somewhat familiar with a little old lady from Dubuque. Is she in any way related to your woman?
Well, one of the characters in my new play insists that she is the model for the little old lady from Dubuque, but there's absolutely no truth to it.
Who was the original?
The play is about truth and illusion, among other matters. I believe when Ross was beginning the New Yorker magazine, somebody asked him what its audience would be. And he said, well, certainly it is not going to be written for the little old lady from Dubuque.
I must now pose that very same question to you. For whom have you written this play?
Certainly not for the little old lady from Dubuque.
You said it's all about truth and illusion.
Well, what else is there? Truth, illusion, sense of reality, sense of identity. These things that I concern myself with in most of my plays.
Well, if there is a single crimson thread running through your plays, I would, at least by my view, I would say it would be the stripping away of illusions. Why must illusions go?
Eugene O'Neill said that you couldn't survive without what he referred to as, now I can't remember what he referred to it as, in The Iceman Cometh, pipe dreams. That affected me very much, because it struck me that that was absolutely wrong. That you've got to strip all the illusion away and then build all the pipe dreams, but know that they're untrue. That you can't build anything except on absolutely solid ground. Illusions are okay. Delusions are okay as long as you understand what they are. And so I suppose my plays are concerned with people knowing the difference between an illusion and a false illusion. Maintaining an illusion because you require it rather than believing it to be a truth.
You were once quoted as saying, and I'm going to try to remind you of that quote, and you can either refute or affirm it, that people still refuse to think, to act honorably, to think, or people still refuse to think or to act honorably with each other. They are still mean and vicious, and they are the subject of my plays.
That's part of it, certainly. I wouldn't refute that. I do think people deal quite dishonorably with themselves, dishonestly with themselves, and which leads to dishonorable and dishonest dealing with other people. It's the self-awareness that's far more important, the self-delusion, which leads to the inadequacies, the cruelties, and everything else.
The subject matter and even the theatrical techniques of your plays have varied quite widely. I'm thinking obviously of Virginia Woolf, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, to Tiny Alice, to the American Dream, to the quotations from Chairman Mao, to Seascape. For our education, and this is quite a request, could you draw a verbal graph of your own theatrical development, and perhaps you might characterize the major periods? Because I think that they are all quite different, while often your critics keep on looking for recurring themes.
Mm-hmm. I know they do.
It's not George and Martha all over again.
No, certainly not. One of the things that worries me is to have to start thinking of myself in the third person, and also posthumously. No.
Well, here alive and well.
I'm theoretically, given the actuarial tables, about halfway through my career. I've written 20 plays, 18, maybe 20. I plan to write another 18 or 20. Maybe by the time I finish that, a philosophical shape will have evolved, and a stylistic shape will have evolved. I am aware, though, that each play demands a slightly different kind of reality, a slightly different kind of style for its content. Style, form and content co-determining each other. That each play must be a totally different world, a totally different environment. The characters must be real in a totally different way in each particular play. So, all of my plays seem very dissimilar to each other, which is indeed the way they must. I suppose there is a particular sound going through the plays, which is the way my mind translates my thoughts into my characters' minds and characters' speeches. There must be a use of language which is now considered the way Albee writes. But it's very difficult for me to think about those things, because I think about the absolute reality of each piece. When I sit down to write a play, I don't say, well, now, how does this relate to the canon of my work up till now? I mean, gee, I'd be a pretty silly person if I did that, wouldn't I? I'd certainly be a self-conscious and humorless person if I did that.
And humor is a very significant part of your work. To my surprise, I can recall a long while ago, thinking of your literary exemplars and who they were, that humorous character, writer that most amused you or provoked you was James Thurber.
Oh,
is that still true?
The most serious of our humorists.
What about Thurber?
Laughter in the Dark, my goodness. I mean, he and Nabokov are both funny equally. And I find our most serious playwrights exceedingly funny writers. Sam Beckett is a very funny writer.
Is it their sense of the absurd that you think is humorous?
Sense of the absurd? In the existentialist sense of it, of course, certainly. And if we're to judge by the way Tennessee Williams reacts to his plays when he goes to see them, he thinks they're exceedingly funny, too.
Do you?
Think his plays are funny? Sometimes.
Are there any of the younger, newer playwrights whose work you find particularly of particular interest?
I hate making lists for only one reason. I always leave out the person I like most.
Well, with that caveat.
But what does interest me is that so many more... When I began writing plays, there was a whole generation of us in the late 50s, early 60s. Jack Gelber, Arthur Kopit, Jack Richardson, myself, and some others of us, a new generation of American playwrights. There weren't very many of us. Now, there are so many of considerable talent, whether they're going to live up to their promise or not. Most of them, the ones under 30, it's too early to tell. Even the most productive of them. There are an awful lot more interesting people writing for the American stage now than ever before. I find that exciting.
Can you name anyone specifically whose work you look to with considerable promise? As having considerable promise?
Well, for example, I've found that Sam Shepard's work has interested me considerably for a number of years now. I'm watching David Mamet's work to discover if there's a mind to go with the ear. A lot of them are exceedingly provocative. Now, I've mentioned two. There are 15 or 20 others that are probably stand the chance of being as interesting, ultimately, as Shepard and Mamet. But I've just mentioned those two because I can't remember everybody else.
But one of the things that you do for numbers of playwrights, I guess it's for more than 10 years now that the Edward F. Albee Foundation is now in existence. Can you tell us about it? What was your motivation in starting it, and what are its goals?
Let's work backwards. It is the foundation, my foundation maintains a residence out in Montauk, near my home, for playwrights, novelists, poets, and painters and sculptors. Preferably, they should be young, highly talented, and not have any other place to go. In other words, broke would be nice, too. They can come there and live in a communal sense, have a space to work, and usually have the experience of working with fellow creative people that they haven't had before, which is nice.
How many people are there at any one time?
Oh, 6 at a time, so they'll be on the average of 25 or 30 during the course of a year. They stay 1 month, 2 months, sometimes 3 months.
Anything been written there or painted there that we know about in its
well, you see, most
existence?
of the people that come are quite young, and they're just beginning, but names that among in the arts that people might know, indeed, 2 sculptors who've been there in the past couple of years who I think are really first-rate, John Duff and Edmea Westerland. Painters who've been there, Jonathan Thomas, the Canadian painter, Laurie Shalland, a girl who just had a show at the Art Institute. He was a good painter. Among writers, indeed, Jeff Wan Shell, for example, among the playwrights. Again, I'm going to get in terrible trouble with names. There have been probably 150 people there over the past 8 or 10 years.
What was your motivation in creating this place, now referred to, I guess, with some affection as the Barn?
Well, there was a very practical consideration. This was a day of exceedingly crucifying income tax, and it seemed an opportunity to do something useful by putting money that I had at that particular time from Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf into something useful like the foundation, rather than giving it to the government to misuse as it saw fit. And also, as I say, it seemed a useful and provocative thing to do. Most of the existing foundations are there for established creative people. The summer colonies, the writers' colonies, and that sort of thing, Yaddo, MacDowell Colony, and the others, generally speaking, are for established people. I thought it'd be interesting to have one for people who are just starting out.
You spend as much of your life in the company of the visual artist as the literary one. Have you ever painted yourself?
I wanted to be a composer when I was 12, except I was too lazy to learn how to read music or play the piano. I do a little bit of post-constructivist sculpture painting from time to time.
Sculpture painting? What do you mean when you say that?
Well, it's sculpture that is really painting, and painting that is sort of sculptural. I mean, Van Tongelu did it, why shouldn't I?
This play, The Lady from Dubuque, your new play, will we be seeing that on Broadway?
I think so. Probably this coming autumn.
And you will be directing it?
I've taken to directing my plays now because I studied a lot of other directors directing my work. Good directors. You know, Alan Schneider and Peter Hall and Jean-Louis Barrault and Franco Zeffirelli and all the others. Good men.
Yes.
Little did they know that I was watching them very carefully to put them out of work. But I've learned how to be a reasonably good director. I know better than that, a very good director. And in spite of the possible dangers of a playwright directing his own work, this lack of objectivity, certainly I can get closer to what I think I intended than anybody else can, since I know my craft of directing, of working with actors, and also being very tough on me as an author. Because a director is concerned with what is possible, and the author is concerned with what's theoretical.
Isn't there an implied danger of the lawyer who tries his own case in that, though?
No, because there, it's total self-interest. The director and the author are two separate, totally different people. Their responsibilities are different and their goals are different.
And you can separate the two?
Oh, all writers are schizophrenic.
But you're also a performer. Or you have been.
Well, I quit acting when I was, what, 18?
Do you think it's important for a director to have been a performer?
I think it's
or a
important
writer?
for a playwright to know his way around as much of the theater as he possibly can. If he can have acted and can direct and knows how to talk to a set designer, a lighting designer, it's all very important. The theater is built of so much imprecision. It has to be filtered through so many mentalities. It's awfully hard to get that fragile thing of the author's intention through these occasional barriers. And so if you can help by being able to talk to people on the terms that they have to work in, it's very important.
You mentioned earlier, without an edge of irony, that you wait to read the critics to see what your plays, or at least what they think what your plays are
I
about.
thought there was some irony there.
Do you read the reviews? Do you really read them? Do they influence you?
I read them for two reasons. I'm an optimist, and I keep hoping they'll get better. Not more favorable, but more intelligent, more perceptive. And also, I do have to know, since unfortunately most of the time all the critics can tell me is how long the play will run. Unfortunately, most critics cannot tell me how well I've succeeded to my intention, because most of them aren't equipped to tell anybody how they've succeeded to their intention at all.
Are you suggesting the state of criticism currently is a sorry one?
I think as long as any society exists that needs the critic to stand between it and receiving the art we're in a sorry state.
Is there any society that existed without it, no matter what the reference
Oh,
was?
no, certainly not.
And you don't envision our doing away with that?
Oh, no, not at all. Ideally, it wouldn't be required.
For the playwright, ideally.
No, I think for the audience.
Don't you think the audience currently, particularly with the rise of the avant-garde, as widespread as it is sometimes, the currency, that the audience, and especially in this city, is particularly sophisticated, so that unless the review is utterly damning, it becomes a parallel source of information?
I'm not sure about that. You're talking about the 5% of the people who participate in the arts who do it as a natural occurrence. It is said, for example, that out of a megalopolis around New York, the New York area, 15 million people, there is a guaranteed audience for a serious play of perhaps 60,000 people. Now, the rest of the audience is going to come fundamentally from what the critics say, not because they care about the serious experience for its own sake.
Mm-hmm. All the time we hear that the theater is dying, all the time, except this year. Whenever have I heard more enthusiastic reports, at least from Broadway theater people, and off-Broadway as well. I guess you should tell us, since everyone in the theater always gets asked, and should be, what you consider to be the current state of the American theater.
It's helped enormously by the fact that television is finally driving people out of the house. I think the level of mediocrity in the theater has risen considerably in the past 15, 20 years. I think most of what passes for seriousness is laughable. There is this awful dilemma of, in the commercial theater, can the really serious art piece survive, or must it be a kind of Mittelbau ersatz piece that passes for seriousness, and that misinforms. It's a fairly complex matter.
Should we have a national theater in this country? Would it make a difference? Or would
I don't think it would.
Grassroots
I think all it
populism
would really do ultimately is shift the responsibility of doing serious work further away from the commercial theater. The rise of regional theaters around the country now has taken off of the shoulders of Broadway so much of the responsibility of originating serious plays. Do you know that in the past 2 or 3 years, most of what passes for serious plays that have been done in the commercial theater in New York on Broadway, almost every single one of them has been done in a regional theater first.
That is quite true. I guess that more and more Broadway is thought of as the commercial theater.
It always has been the commercial theater. And there's never been a time where out of the 25, 30, or 40 plays that are playing on Broadway at any one time, there are more than 1 or 2 that are really worth anybody's time.
Is not off-Broadway commercial as well?
Off-Broadway has just about vanished.
It's off-Broadway? What has happened to off-Broadway?
Off-Broadway was destroyed by a combination of greed and contract. So it's a fairly complex matter. Off-Broadway's just about had it.
Didn't you once have a producing company of your own?
Sure, we did a lot of work off-Broadway. Back in the days when the actors used to get $40 or $50 a week, the theater owners only demanded $300 a week for the theater. We could charge $2 admission, $3 admission, and everybody worked for love. And it was easy.
Is it economics that has done away with that?
It's economics that has just about destroyed the off-Broadway theater. To finish the point, just briefly, indeed, the commercial theater is commerce, right? But the problem, it also all goes back to what you said about a national theater. The regional theater is filtering serious theater away from Broadway. A national theater would do the same thing. Put the serious work over there in the national theater, and the commercial theater can just go on doing the junk that it does. There's no virtue in that necessarily.
I can't resist asking a question, of course, that central and pivotal play, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? I've often thought of it really meaning who's afraid of living life without illusions. Is that close to the mark?
Sure.
If now, 20 years later...
No, it's not 20 years in that play. close.
It is pretty close to it.
15 years on
Yes,
the play.
early 60s. If you could change that script, would you? Does it still hold?
Theoretical question. I couldn't. I'm a different man than when I wrote it.
But are we different people as well?
I'll tell you, I directed that play for a revival on Broadway 2 years ago, and my level of tolerance has decreased, I guess, over the years, and I kept trying to find ways to cut it because, and unfortunately, I had an author there who'd written a play very tightly. I couldn't cut more than 2 minutes out of it, and I kept finding it rather interesting. No, I don't think I would rewrite any of them differently. I don't know that I would write any of them right now because my concerns have shifted.
What would George and Martha be doing today?
If they survived the 2 or 3 months after the curtain went down on Act 3 of that play, I don't think they would have slipped back into false illusion. I think they'd be making out okay.
You are an optimist.
No, I think I know my characters pretty well. I don't think they'd be bouncing up and down and saying, whoopee, everything in the world is okay. I think they arrived by the end of that play at a greater understanding of the games they were playing with themselves and a greater understanding of each other. And if, I say, they survived without trying to construct another false environment for themselves, I imagine they've made it okay.
Classical drama usually had man pitted against the world and the gods, but your plays mostly are about people that are being, I guess, terribly nasty to other people. It seems to be not only an important theme in your work, but for that matter in a good deal of contemporary literature.
Well, I don't know that the Macbeths were very nice people. Certainly Lear had some trouble with his kids. I don't think Jocasta was too much fun to be around. I don't think it's changed all that much. I just think our definitions and the foci have changed.
Well, one thing we know hasn't changed at all, and that is the rare combination of high talent, serious purpose, and dramatic intensity that you represent. We look forward to seeing The Lady from Dubuque this fall, and more of Edward Albee here and elsewhere. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Barbara Lee Diamonstein, and thank you, audience, for being with us too.